My first guest is actor Dave Prowse. Now, Dave began his career as a bodybuilder and went on to become a competitive weightlifter. But it was for his role as the terrifying Darth Vader in the 1977 Star Wars that he's most famous for. His new autobiography, Straight from the Force's Mouth, documents his journey from a difficult childhood to international success. David Prowse, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Nice to be with you.
Now, David, at age 13, you was registered as a crippled child, weren't you?
That's right, yes. They thought I had tuberculosis on the knee. And I went to see my doctor, and my doctor sent me to see a specialist, and the specialist put me into a TB sanatorium. And would you believe they kept me in there for a year, trying to prove that I had tuberculosis. And I was 5'9" when I went in, and a year later I came out, and they said, well, look, we're going to put you in a leg iron. And I was 6'3". I grew 6 inches while I was in bed. And then I had the leg iron until I was 15 and a half, and by which time I'd gone up to 6'5". And then at the age of 15 and a half, they said, well, look, throw away your leg iron. There was nothing ever wrong with you in the first instance. And start doing some exercises. So I started a bodybuilding course, and then eventually finished up at 6'7", and got invited to enter the Mr. Universe contest.
So what happened from there when you went to do the Mr. Universe contest? Because you went to become a weightlifter in the end, didn't you?
Well, but that was the problem there was I entered the Mr. Universe contest, and I was 6'7", and I was like 17 and a half stone. I was the tallest competitor they've ever had, the biggest competitor they have ever had. And at the end of the competition, the chief of the judges came up to me and he said, Dave, he said, can I have a little chat with you? And I said, yes, of course. And he said, yeah, he said, you'll never ever win the Mr. Universe contest. I said, well, hang on, why not? I'm the biggest competitor you've ever had. I'm 6'7", 17 and a half stone. I can obviously get a lot bigger. He said, well, no, it's got nothing to do with your physique. I said, well, what's the problem? He said, you've got ugly feet. And I said, well, I can't do anything about my feet. I can't train my feet. He said, well, I'm sorry. He said, but you've got hammer toes and bunions and things like this. And he said, it detracts from your overall physique. And he said, if it comes to a judgment between two physiques of equal standing, the judges will nitpick, and you will never win. So,
but you didn't give up, though, did you?
No. I then changed over. I thought I was getting quite strong at the time, so I changed over to competitive weightlifting. And the following year, that was 1960, was the Universe contest. 1961, I placed third in the British Weightlifting Championships, and then in 1962, I won it. And I went to the World Weightlifting Championships in Budapest, and I did the Empire and Commonwealth Games in Perth, Australia. 63, I won it again. 64, I won it again. And then we were all training to go to Tokyo for the Olympic Games. And at the very last minute, I qualified and set up a qualifying total and things like this, and I've been selected for the team. And then just before we were due to go, the Weightlifting Association got in touch and said, look, ever so sorry, but we haven't got enough money to send a complete team, and the heavyweight stands least chance of getting anywhere. So unfortunately, you won't be going. So I thought, well, I'll turn professional and see what happens. And almost the first thing that happened was I got offered a part in a play. I played a little play at the Mermaid Theatre in London called Don't Let Summer Come.
Right, so this is what started the connection.
Deaf.
Yeah. So this is what started the connection with the acting.
That's what happened, yeah. That's how it all happened.
Oh my gosh, so something as small as that got you to where you are today. So you must have met some very famous people during your time. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a name that was in your book.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno. I met all the really the big bodybuilders. I mean, Lee Haney, you name them, Tom Platz.
But obviously the bodybuilding scene right now it's a different scene, isn't it?
Oh, completely.
I mean,
I wouldn't want anything to do with it now.
No, I mean the steroid use is quite
so the steroid abuse is rife. I get no enjoyment out of reading the big bodybuilding magazines, especially the American bodybuilding magazines.
Yeah. So obviously, when you got into this small play, you started doing some commercials, didn't you?
Yes, I did actually. Yeah, I did. I think the first one I did was for Hot Point washing machines, and I used to go on and I used to have this towel. They started up a competition. And it was like, even Britain's strongest man cannot wring water out of a towel which has been spun dry by the Hot Point spinner, and they had this competition went nationwide, where people used to try and wring water out of these towels in all these different supermarkets and things like this. So they never lost one.
In the background, though, you were still keeping your weightlifting going.
Still training. Oh yeah, because I was opening gymnasiums then. I had a gymnasium at the National Sports Centre at Crystal Palace, and then eventually I opened up my own gymnasium up in just south of the river, as it were, in Black Prince Road.
Now, film offers were coming in, weren't they? And you starred in some iconic films. But I'm going to jump forward a bit with this and just go straight to Stanley Kubrick.
That was 1970.
Which is some time on, isn't it, from where we're talking about? But how did you get that role with Stanley?
It was just out of the blue. I just got a phone call, and they said, Mr. Kubrick would very much like to see you, and can you make an appointment to go and see him? You say so. So I rang up Mr. Kubrick's office, and they said, well, Mr. Kubrick's working on the film. Can you see him like 7 o'clock of an evening, because you'll be finished with the film by then, you see. So I chased all the way up to Stanley. I had to go to Stanley's house. And so I chased all the way up to L3, went to Stanley's house, sat there and sat in and waited, and no sign of Stanley. About 9 o'clock came and still no sign of Stanley. And they came in and said, apologise. And they said, well, terribly sorry, but he's been detained on sec. Can you make another appointment? So another appointment was made like for, I think, the following day or something like this. And I did exactly the same thing again, went out to Stanley's house, waited, no sign of Stanley. And then they came back and apologised, and they said, "Look, would you do us a favour and make another appointment? But please do. Can you do it at your convenience?" And I thought, well, Sunday night, 7 o'clock on a Sunday night, he's definitely not going to be filming. So this appointment was made, and I went to see him, and he was there waiting for me.
And the rest was history, wasn't it?
Yeah, we just sat there and we talked about the part. And
but you make it sound so simple. You make it seem so. Was it that easy?
Yeah, well, you see, the thing is, I wasn't sort of in awe and wonder of Stanley at the time. I mean, to me, he was another director, and I just was looking forward to working with him.
Yeah.
And as I said, we talked about the part, and he said, well, would you read this particular line? And I just read the line, and he said, well, no, obviously, I said, you're obviously reading it, And I said, well, well, you can't expect me to act just one line, And anyway, they offered me the role, and that was instrumental. The mere fact that I'd worked for Stanley Kubrick, I suddenly became Dave Prowse actor. Before then, I was like Dave Prowse heavy, ex-bodybuilder, weightlifter, etc. But nobody ever thought of me as an actor. But having worked for Stanley, that was my acclaim, as it were. Yeah,
absolutely, and it must have been a transformation for yourself.
It was.
So many ways.
Yeah.
And obviously, one of your other famous roles was the Green Cross Code Man.
Best job I've ever had. Loved it. It was my agent got in touch with me, and she said my husband works for Ogilvy Benson in Mayfair, which is a very big advertising agency in London. And she said they've just been awarded the contract for the Central Office of Information to do commercials for the COI. And one of the first things they're going to do is a commercial for child pedestrian road safety. And they're looking for a Superman character. And we think you're the obvious answer. And would you like to go and have a chat with the people at Ogilvy Benson in Mayfair? Anyway, I went to see them, and they said, well, you're exactly what we want. Perfect. You got the job. But we've got to hold an audition. I said, well, why have you got all in the...
Yeah.
Hey, well, we have to show that everything's above board, you see. So anyway, they held this audition, and about 20 great big guys arrived for this role, and I was one of the last ones to go in, and they said, well, you've already got the job. And I mean, it turned out to be the greatest job I've ever had. I loved every minute of it. We started, it went from 1976 to 80, where we did 15 television commercials. Yeah. And then from 80 to 90, I was just doing basically nothing else but Green Cross Code work, because I was working like all the school period, the school terms. So
it was pretty much a full-time job, wasn't it?
It became a full-time job, yeah.
How many children's lives at the time did you save?
Well, when we started the campaign, the accident rate in Great Britain was running at 40,000 a year. There were 40,000 children a year getting knocked down, injured and killed on the roads. And when we finished in 1990, the road accident figures were at 20,000. So, and if you added it all up, we'd actually saved something like 250,000 children's lives. And then in the year 2000, I was awarded the MBE from the Queen for services to child pedestrian road safety and also charity.
I mean, it's an incredible thing what you've done.
Thank you.
You
Thank
know,
you. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful job. And I said the interesting thing now is that everybody comes out. I'm always getting recognised, but they recognise me not from playing Darth Vader. It's all from the Green Cross Code, and people come up to you, and quite famous people, for instance, come up to me and say, "Oh, we know we've met before, haven't we?" And I had it once with them. Do you remember Sam Fox, the lovely pin-up girl, Sam Fox? I always remember she came up to me once and she said, "Oh, Dave." She said, "We've met before, haven't we?" And I said, "No, I definitely would remember if I'd met you." And she said, "Oh, yes, we have. Yeah." She said, "You came to my school when I was 7." I said, "Thank you very much." That dates me a bit.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah.
But wasn't you also at that time, or maybe it was a few years onwards, applying for the Superman role as well? I mean, that was coming up, wasn't it? The original Superman.
I've never ever tried so hard as I tried to get the part of Superman for myself. And I kept getting knocked back. I mean, the casting director knocked me back, the producer knocked me back, the director knocked me back. Everybody said, "No, there's no way that we can play you. You're exactly what we're looking for, but we can't play you because you're not an American. We have to play an American." Superman is such a major part of American comic folklore history that the American public, who are going to account for probably 90% of the revenue of the film, just wouldn't accept anything but an American.
Do you think that's changed nowadays? That sort of stigmata towards British actors? No,
I don't think so. No, I think with something as iconic as the American all-time hero, I think it's almost essential to be.
So in the end, though, you ended up training Christopher Reeve, though, didn't you?
Christopher Reeve. Yeah, Christopher Reeve got the role, and I got introduced to him, and Dick Donner, who was the director, rang me up and said, "We'd like you to come down and meet Chris." And I said, "Well, what's he like?" And he said, "Well, he's about 6'5" and weighs about 13 stone." I said, "Well, hang on a minute, he's positively skinny." I said, "How can you have a guy 13 stone as Superman?" They said, "Well, this is the problem." They said, "Do you think you can build him up?" And I said, "Well, how long have I got?" They said, "Well, 6 weeks before he goes into his suit, into the Superman suit." And anyway, in 6 weeks, I put 40 pounds on him in 6 weeks.
Incredible.
Put nearly over 3 stone on him. In 6 weeks of really hard training and force feeding, as it were, and he looked quite good actually when he went into his suit. I still think he could have been a lot bigger, but I mean, I would like to have seen somebody much bigger and much more muscular.
Well, we're going to talk about so much more after the break, so stay tuned, as after the break we'll be continuing to talk to Dave Prowse about his life and autobiography straight from the Force's mouth.
You're on a journey right now, a destination where you are headed full of adventure. And all around you are clues pointing you in the direction of your higher purpose and dreams. The signs and synchronicities can be seen. Whilst on a trip, at your local coffee shop, within your social networks. The road to your success and happiness is scattered throughout the pictures of our days. Simply make the connection, that's all. Channeling.com is your source for highly regarded spiritual readers who can direct you on your journey. Use the code TMS1 to receive a discount on your first reading.
Welcome back. I'm still joined by actor Dave Prowse. Now, Dave, they say that life starts at 40, don't they?
Yes, they certainly do, yeah.
And was that the case for you?
It certainly did for me, yeah, it really did, because I mean, let's go 40, I was born in 1935, so it would have been 1975, and that was really basically the start of everything.
Yes.
Star Wars came along, the Green Cross Code came along, it was a wonderful time.
What was it like making, when you was on the set of Star Wars? I mean, was it very confusing as to exactly what you were involved with at the time?
It was, yeah. It was a strange Star Wars. It was a strange movie to work on because basically you had a script. That was the only of all the three. Was the only one you had a script for, and so it was the only one where you sort of knew you could read the script and you thought where you'd knew the story. But there was so many. The sets that they built were phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you had all these funny creatures wandering around all the time, and you think, well, where do they fit in?
Yeah.
And it was really quite strange. And as I said, Alec Guinness never had a clue what he was up to. He didn't know what his part was all about and things like this. And Peter Cushing likewise. I mean, it's, you see them talking to each other, and neither of them had a clue as to what the story was all about. It was a strange movie to work on, but enjoyable in the finish. It was second and third. I enjoyed this third. I enjoyed the second one. Empire Strikes Back was my favorite.
That was your favorite, wasn't it?
We had a lovely director, Irving Kershner. The only problem is, when we did Empire and when we did Jedi, all they would give you was your pages for whatever day you were working.
It was under lock, wasn't it?
Everything was under lock and key, yeah. And they used to courier your pages down to you the night before, and then you used to have to sign to say that you'd received the pages from the motorcyclist, and then you have to learn your lines overnight, and then you go into the studio the following day and do your little bit of acting, as it were, and then hand your pages back in and sign your pages back into the studio. And this went on all the way through. So I've never, ever seen a script for Empire Strikes Back, and I've never, ever seen a script for Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, because in Return of the Jedi, I mean, there were scenes being shot that you knew nothing of, did you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, especially,
I mean, I didn't know that I was Luke Skywalker's father until I went and saw the film.
What do you think about the latest Star Wars movies? I mean,
I thought they were terrible, to be perfectly honest. I mean, don't tell George Lucas that. But no, I didn't think they were all that good. I thought there was a terrible difference between the technology in 1, 2, 3 was so much better than the technology we had in 4, 5, 6, and so it was really all out of context.
So, what would you say was your best moment, shall we say, in the Star Wars films that you starred in?
When my first residual check arrived for working on Empire Strikes Back. No, I mean, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to work with people like Harrison and Carrie and Mark and things like this. And it's lovely to say that you've worked with Sir Alec Guinness, and it's nice to, as Peter Cushing's been a friend for years, because I did several films with him before Star Wars.
Absolutely, but like any job, you soon fall out of communication, don't you?
That's right. Oh yeah,
I mean, it's on with the next,
it's
isn't
short
it?
and sweet. Yeah.
Well, after obviously Star Wars came out and the other two films followed, you got to meet some very famous people, didn't you? Well,
I've met some fantastic people. I mean, I got very interested in singing, and as a result of the singing, I went over to Las Vegas, and I actually sang with Howard Keel, who was one of the great all-time sort of singers, and had a wonderful time, singing with him. Met up with Catherine Grayson, met Shirley Jones, who did Carousel, and Catherine Grayson did all the Mario Lanza movies, and I was more interested in talking to her about Mario Lanza than I was about her singing, But I mean, she was nice to work with, and before that, I'd been to San Francisco, met up with Mel Torme, who was a great singer, Mountain Greenery, did years and years ago. And I've got a great pleasure in meeting all these different people.
You went on interviews all over the world, didn't you? I mean,
That's right.
It was an incredible journey you went on, and you've documented all this in your latest
book. That's right. Yeah, lots of it is in the book, as much as I can remember. Well, I've been very good, because I've kept diaries, for years and years and years, and if I go back over the diaries and think to myself, I can't remember doing that, and so I've then repeated it and written about it in the diary. So it's quite an interesting exercise, actually, to sit down and
it must be very therapeutic.
And it is. Go over your life story. And
so what's some of the newer things in this newest edition of the book then? I mean, what's some of the newer
chapters?
Well,
there's a couple of extra chapters. There's a chapter which is all about my problems with my health, as it were. Well, not so much health, but my problems with arthritis and the different operations and things that I've just had. And I've just had a real big one just recently. I had an operation where they removed my hip, my femur, and my knee all in one go.
Oh my gosh!
And so I'm now like I now have a still hip, a still femur, and a still knee. I feel like the bionic man, as it were.
Yeah, because you support a lot of charities, don't you? I mean.
Oh yeah. Well, I have lots of these are sort of near to my heart, and as much that my first charity that I really got associated with was Arthritis Care. Because I'd had an arthritis problem, and so I did as much as I possibly could to help with the Arthritis Care, the charity. And then a few years ago, I managed to get diagnosed with prostate cancer, and then through that, I got associated with the Prostate Cancer Association, and then I got associated with the Urology Foundation, and now the Prostate Cancer Association and the Breast Cancer Association have combined, and we're doing a combined effort for the London Marathon next year. And so I'm supporting all this. Oh no, yeah. Well, I think it's nice. It's nice to be able to put something back in, as it were, all the time. It's,
yes, it's important.
I've had such a wonderful career, and I've met some wonderful people, and I've earned good money and things like this. It's been a great life, and it's nice to be able to hand something back.
Well, what happened to your career after Star Wars then?
Well, no, Star Wars is never. I mean, Star Wars is never finished. I mean, my whole life revolves basically around Star Wars and the convention scene. I mean, I now do conventions all over the world, doing personal appearances at these conventions and giving talks at these conventions. And I think already for next year, I've got 30 shows worldwide, going from everywhere from Albuquerque, New Mexico, to Winnipeg and Calgary and Australia and all over the continent and things like this. I can be somewhere different in the world every weekend. And doing Star Wars shows, yeah. I always years ago there used to be a cigarette ad on TV, and it was for a cigarette called Peter Stuyvesant, and this guy used to come along and he used to smoke a cigarette and say, "Passport to international pleasure," and I think to myself, Star Wars, passport to international pleasure. Yeah.
I mean, because obviously Star Wars, it's kept going, and whether it's the Blu-ray release or the 3D release. I mean, with the 3D, you'll be supporting that release next year, won't you?
That's right. Yeah, and going over to Copenhagen actually for the first ever edition, for the first ever showing of I think it's Phantom Menace. Phantom Menace in 3D. Yeah, going over for that.
So at your point of your career right now, in your life, I mean, what's most important to you right now? I'm happily married. I got a nice house. I live a very ordinary life. Apart from traveling around the world with Star Wars, I have a very ordinary life. I just like to be. I like being accepted for who I am, and I like. I obviously appreciate the interest that I get from what I've done, because as I said, I've had a great career, an interesting career. I mean, is there any sort of regrets that you've got, or?
No, well, I think Star Wars could have been a lot more, lot better for me than it actually has been. It's been a long. I mean, Star Wars has been a big struggle, with me not to get the acclaim from the not from fandom,
sure,
but from the management sort of side of things. I think if my association with, for instance, Lucasfilm had been a lot better, things would have been much more interesting.
But do you think that's just the movie industry in general?
No, I think maybe. I think you have to be very, very careful how you talk and what you say and who you talk to. That's one of the big things, because when it's like when you're on tour and people come up to you and want to do interviews with you, you say, I'm quite happy to do all these interviews. It pleases me no end that people are sufficiently interested to want to interview me. But then I got no idea as to what they're going to do with the interview, and I said to them, unfortunately, sometimes they get put in the wrong places, and it gets back to Lucasfilm, and David Prowse is in the doghouse.
I mean, just before we finish this, I mean, one supportive person that you've really stuck with just recently is Jace Lewis, the singer. Jace Lewis,
of course, yeah.
And you've done him. I mean, what you've done for that guy is just incredible, and talk about give back. You've really helped him out, haven't you?
Well, it all started with him meeting up with me at a convention, and then I saw him play, and I thought, wow, what a drummer!
He's good, isn't he?
Fantastic drummer. Good. I mean, well, to me, he's one of the greatest drummers I've ever seen, and I got very interested then in his group that he was playing with, the group called Losing Sun. Unfortunately, Losing Sun didn't last very, very long, because they started fighting amongst each other, and they didn't get on very well towards the end. But I put some money into the group and got them a lot of publicity. I employed a publicity agent to get them the really good publicity, and then, as I said, I've kept in touch with Jason, And wherever possible, we try and do things together, and I try and help them in all sorts of different ways. I was responsible for getting them quite a few sponsorships at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Everything from sort of amplifiers to watches to you name it, clothing, all sorts of different things.
I think it's fantastic what you two are doing
It's
together.
just nice. It's a nice guy to work with.
Yeah, well, yes, he is.
And it's probably more interesting now that he's a solo artist than it was when he was
Absolutely, it brings out more, doesn't it? When he's developed into a completely different direction.
Very, very talented guy. Very talented. Yeah.
Okay, well, look, David, just thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it.